Hello, welcome to our third panel of the day here at Utah Remote Con. We thank you so much for joining us. We hope you're having a wonderful Labor Day holiday. We do just want to give you an update real quick before we get into our panel on how we're doing as far as donations go. We are up over $1,700. Thank you so much for that. We hope to continue to collect donations through this panel. To do that, you can go to givebutter.com/Utah RemoteCon 2020 to make donations there. You can also, while you're there, buy raffle tickets. We've got a great raffle that we're giving away today. It is 2 great prints of Captain America. In fact, let me see if I can show this to you really quick here. On one of my other tabs, but they're amazing prints that you can pick up with the raffle today. So if you like Captain America, which you probably do if you're here for this panel, you'd probably love to win these prints, and we're very grateful for the artists who have donated it to them or to us. And again, that is givebutter.com/Utah RemoteCon 2020. I'm going to go ahead and bring on our panelists now. We have with us Blake Castleman, who has put together this panel for us. And I'm going to add in our other panelists. And then, Blake, I'm turning it over to you. I'm sorry, we had some technical difficulties with the pictures. I'm sorry, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys. And then I'm just going to disappear. And I'll see you again with like 5 minutes left in the panel.
Thank you, Jake.
Bye, Jake.
It's all good about the audio, the video portion of the panel not working. We're going to Ringo Starr this. We're just going to be happy to be here because, it's
Bill O'Reilly.
It's exactly.
I won't quote it though.
So I am so excited to be here. I love these 2 characters. These are my 2 favorite characters from the MCU, with the exception of maybe Spider-Man and Iron Man and Thor. No, I love Captain America. I love Agent Carter. I was going to show a picture of the picture my wife and I and 2 of our kids got to have with Haley Atwell, and his name is suddenly escaping me. Captain America.
Chris Evans?
Chris Evans, yes.
Okay. Look, I thought it was like Dominic Cooper. I'm trying to think of all the people from Captain America that has ever come to any convention I've ever been at.
We've been researching all this stuff about Peggy Carter. I forgot Chris Evans. So, but my name is Blake Castleman. I am a local Utah filmmaker and screenwriter and comic book writer. And I would like everyone else to introduce themselves. We'll start with you, London.
Hi, I'm London. I'm pre-med at the University of Utah. A switch over from my first bachelor's degree, which was in English with a minor in Latin. So I did a lot with medieval studies in that. So I have an interest in Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, and other Jews like me in comic books. So another thing that I have an interest in is the ACLU. I volunteer with them here in Utah. So just a reminder, we are not very far from the election coming up in November. So please go to vote.gov and make sure that you're registered to vote.
All right, thank you. Craig.
Hey, it's Craig Price from Matinee Heroes. Matinee Heroes is a podcast I do with critic Alan Cerny. We talk about heroic cinema, and you don't get much more heroic than Peggy and Steve. Which we've covered Captain America a couple times on the show. And also, since this is that time of year and we're not there, I usually come to Utah. I'm Utah by marriage because my wife is from Utah, and we usually come in to do the big convention at FanX, which is how I know Blake and everybody. So I'm really missing FanX. I'm really glad that the Remote Con is here to fill that void. And please donate if you can to givebutter.com/Utah Con Remote Con 2020, something like that. There it is. And that's the most important part, is the donating to the American Cancer Society.
Indeed. Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica. I am of Dice and Dames. What we do is we play video games and we play test a bunch of indie TTRPGs, kind of get their voices out there in the gaming world. And lately we've been doing a really cool little homebrew called Tabletop Treasure Hunters, where we're all in these little groups and we go and we fight and try and bring as much gold as we can. And it's just a really fun time, a little friendly competition. So we do that Mondays and Tuesdays, and we kind of just guest all over the internet trying to help promote different types of TTRPGs.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let's just dive into the conversation. We're going to be talking a lot about Peggy Carter because obviously where this love story kind of intersects throughout the whole 22 films of the MCU. I mean, we got a lot of Captain America, but we're going to be specifically looking at the parts where Captain America and Peggy Carter are involved together and together apart, how their relationship evolved and leading up to the final frames of Avengers Endgame. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about some spoilers. So if you're here not having seen any of the Captain America films, any of the Agent Carter content, Avengers Endgame,
This is not a place to start.
it's not a place to start. Exactly. But before we start getting into talking about Peggy and her origins and where she comes from, I wanted to ask the panel, what does Captain America mean to you? What is the appeal of Captain America to you? This isn't something we talked about before, and I thought I'd spring it on you to see what you could come up with on the spot. So, Erica, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Craig and London.
Well, lucky for you, I have an answer prepared. It was actually pretty funny that in a job interview a while ago, they asked like who my idol was. And I unashamedly said Captain America. And that's for a lot of reasons. Growing up, he was someone that I connected to with most because growing up I was bullied for being a nerd, being the tallest one, being a girl in general. I had rocks thrown at me once, a bunch of just random stuff, but I started reading the Captain America comic books, and the way that Steve just embodies being this essentially lawful good and wanting to do the best he can, he lifts everybody up, he does what he can. I connected with that just so hard that when the movies came out, I couldn't help but just like cry because I was like, this is my idol. I can see him on screen. I can see all of this stuff and see it come to life. And there's just so much into it that I love about him. But the thing that I've embodied the most was his ability to help people. That's what he wants. He wants to help people. And so I've taken that in my life as where almost to a fault where I care more about other people than I do myself, because I want to be that person that they maybe didn't have Captain America, as their idol, but I wanted to help somebody in a way that Captain America helped me growing up. So.
Did you get the job?
I hope so.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. I did.
Job pending. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Craig.
A couple years ago.
Oh, good.
Nice.
Steve Rogers is the best of us. He is not a person that was elevated because of his background. He would start out with nothing. He lost his parents. He's not built it like he's supposed to be. He's like a little scrawny guy. And like many of us who were kids, we were little scrawny guys. Yes, he did get injected with the best steroid that in the history of steroids. But like the doctor says, like Stanley Tucci's character says, that they chose him not because he was the best, because he was the biggest and he could fight and he was going to make the best murder machine. They knew he was a good person, and they gave him that serum because it enhances who you are, and so they gave it to him because he is the best of us. He will sacrifice. I mean, if he's worthy to hold Thor's hammer, then he is worthy throughout all of the cosmos. So that's why I love Captain America, and Chris Evans plays him that way. Like he very earnestly, which surprised me because usually he plays kind of surfer bro dudes, and he really hunkered down and made him so sincere and authentic and believable.
Exactly. He's kind of an embodiment of the American dream, the kind of the traditional American dream, isn't it? London.
I think what Erica has said is really beautiful, and what Craig has said is so, about that sincerity and that sort of pure quality. For me, Captain America goes back so much to the author's intent. This isn't a case where we have death of the author. We can go back and really see what Kirby and Simon intended when we look at the circumstances surrounding the creation of Captain America. This was a time of sort of isolationist policy in the U.S. that we didn't want to get involved in World War II.
Well, didn't Captain America come out before we entered World War II?
Mhm.
That's
And
correct.
yet the cover had that striking, iconic Jack Kirby image of Captain America punching out Adolf Hitler.
Yes. And
That's why it was so important.
right. And that's why Kirby and Simon got death threats at their place of work. That was an important statement to them. So for me, it's very much about, like I said, I'm Jewish, so that certainly colors my interpretation of it. It's very much about standing up, not just for yourself, but for other people. And like Erica said, and like Craig said, doing what you know is right, to protect people, not going beyond, not becoming the bully that you hate, and that, or not necessarily even hate, but not becoming the bully that you know is wrong, but being able to stand up for yourself in values that you know are right and good, and being the embodiment of that goodness.
Excellent.
Even when people around you aren't doing it.
Excellent. So I getting into Peggy Carter and her origin, it's really interesting because she's a creation of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee.
Mhm.
But she wasn't introduced as a major character like she is in the movies. It was
Right.
actually Tales of Suspense number 77, which came out in May of 1966. And she was a nameless person in a flashback that was identified as a love interest of Steve Rogers during his World War II years. And it wasn't until Captain America 161, which was in May of 1973, Steve Englehart and Sal Buscema actually identified her as Peggy Carter, and she would show up periodically in flashbacks. And she was originally introduced as Sharon Carter. By this time, Sharon Carter had been introduced as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she had become a love interest of Captain America. Well, Peggy Carter was eventually identified as the older sister of Sharon Carter. But by 2007, when we had the great Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting run on Captain America, they had to retcon her origin a little bit because Sharon Carter was still the same age as Steve Rogers, and we couldn't have Peggy back in World War II being her older sister, so she was retconned as Sharon's aunt, which is where we pick up in the movie. So I wanted to focus on Peggy a little bit. London's going to lead us on a question about Peggy.
So why do we love Peggy? What makes her appealing to fans of the Marvel universe, cinematic or otherwise? So let's start with Erica, and then we'll go to Craig and then to Blake.
Oh man, this is kind of an interesting one. I think it's very important in general having someone who is a female representation. That's very important for women in general and for men. It's important to have that kind of an idol. And in specific regards to the movies, I don't want to go too into it because I know other people have different assignments, but like when you first see her, she punches the guy for talking down to her. And that just like that immediate was just like, that's who I need in my life. You know, that's the kind of idol that I want to have. And so her appeal is isn't just I'm a badass woman. It's I'm a woman who can stand up for myself. I'm a woman who can do what needs to be done. I can be trusted, but I can also have a love life, which I thought was really, really sweet. It's like I can be all these things and I can also have someone that I love. So that's why I love her.
Oh, I like that answer. And speaking more specifically to that moment in the film, you know, she doesn't punch him for heckling her about her dialectical variation. She punches him for sexually harassing her.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Too. So yeah, really, really good thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I thought about that later too after, because I've been rewatching Captain America anyways. And I thought about that after. I was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, I think she's a great character in that moment. Oh, go ahead.
And Tommy Lee Jones's reaction to Peggy Carter punching the soldier makes you immediately like his character, because that's the first time you see him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so great.
He just silently condones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Craig, why do we love Peggy? Why do you love Peggy?
Well, the main reason is because Peggy doesn't need Steve. Mm-hmm. Peggy is capable all on her own. She can do all of these things. She doesn't have the super strength, but we see her not only in the movie, but in the television show. She's capable. She can do just as good, even if people in her time frame, in her generation, don't believe women can. She knows what her worth is. She doesn't need to get other people to tell her what her worth is. And that's a very attractive quality when you have a woman who doesn't need anybody. She can do everything the man can without having to be a man. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I don't like, is when they try to make female characters and basically they just like, well, we'll make it just like the man. They'll even talk gruff, be gruff, blah, 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 except she'll wear a dress. No, that's because that's not how women are. Women are themselves. Let them be their traits. And then if they happen to be capable and command attention, they will. And that's what Peggy Carter does. And Haley Atwell, who I've had a chance to meet before, she's a sweetheart and really portrays the humanity in that. Because let's not forget that Peggy loved Steve as skinny Steve.
Oh, yes.
At first. I mean, it didn't hurt that he turned into big buff Chris Evans, but she loved the qualities of the actual person. Then she won the lottery with the physical stuff.
But I think Craig really hit it on the nail. I mean, she's not a Mary Sue.
Mm-hmm.
She's very capable. She can handle herself, but she's not a Mary Sue at all.
Yep.
Yeah, she's a very fully fleshed character. You know, she's witty, but she's not coming up with these remarks in ways that feel insincere and authentic. She has very honest responses to things, and I think she feels very real. And I like specifically that she feels contemporary, but also functions very well as a product of her time. Not necessarily in negative ways, but that there are certain things that she knows she has to put up with, and it's sad and we feel for her. For example, when they are flying Steve in Captain America: First Avenger, they're flying Steve to try and rescue these POWs, and Howard Stark hits on her, and she just ignores it because she has to, where previously we saw her punch a guy for the same thing. But she knows that to be in this place and to do the work she wants to do, she kind of has to put up with it. And historically, that was kind of how it worked. That's still kind of how it works, unfortunately.
Right.
And women just sort of have to choose, and they shouldn't have to. But we do see that in Peggy, and a lot of what she talks about is making choices. making sacrifices and allowing people to make sacrifices too. So what do we see, not just in her relationship to Steve, but in her relationship to the other people that she works with that we admire? So
Well, I think she's very fair-minded. She's very direct, and that's needed for. She's really a trailblazer. You know, I'm the father of 4 girls, and it's really nice to have someone who puts up with many of the same problems or the same issues that women still have to deal with today. And like you said, she's a product of her time, yet she was able to trailblaze herself by not only being tough when she needed to be tough, by standing up for what was right, by standing up for herself, but treating the people that she worked with as equals. And I think that's what led Howard Stark. I mean, we're going to get a little bit more into Captain America: The First Avenger in just a minute. Howard Stark in 1943 hits on her. That's who he is. He's a playboy. I mean, his son was a product, didn't fall far from his tree, and but he was a womanizer, and he hits on her. By 1947, Howard is offering her the position of the director of the newly formed Shield. And so in a 4-year span, she shows Howard Stark and a lot of other people who she really is, how strong she is, how direct she is, and how fair-minded she is, to the point to where they've gained the respect necessary to offer her this position.
Right.
Yep. And that reminds me exactly of Sharon Carter's speech at her funeral, just at the end, where it says, it's your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye, and say, no, you move. And that goes in so many different ways. It goes exactly with like the things that she dealt with, you know, hitting the guy for sexually harassing her, saying, no, you move. It goes in so many different ways, and that's just, it's who she is and who she was. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead to 2011 and the release of Captain America: The First Avenger in London. Take us away.
So one of the things that I noticed and loved, like I said, there's this repeated sort of leitmotif of choice. And if you remember, after Bucky is lost, when Steve is grieving and blaming himself, there's this lovely, compassionate moment where she sits down and she says, did you believe in him? Did you respect him? Stop blaming yourself. He's, you know, give him the dignity of his choice. And I think this is really at the heart of the relationship between the two. You know, that throughout the film, they respect each other's choices in so many ways. So I would love for everyone to take a moment and just think about it. And then we're not going to go in any particular order, just when you have your example of a way that they, you know, it can be Peggy, it can be Steve, it can be both, that they respect a choice or sacrifice that the other makes. Go ahead and talk about that, because I think we have a lot of different options to choose from.
I kind of already have one, because like I just finished the first Captain America last night. And one of my favorite things was their little inside joke of you're late, because they both know that they have their own responsibilities. They both know that it's not within their power to tell the other person no, because they are who they are. So when Captain America fights Red Skull for the first time, he's kind of trapped in the hallway with the guy with the flamethrowers, and Peggy comes in and shoots him, takes him down, saves him. He's like, well, you're late. She's like, well, don't you have somewhere to be? Don't you have something to do? And he's like, oh yeah, I gotta go. And it's a fun, quirky, but also mutual respect in their relationship, that they have this understanding of this is who you are, this is what you're doing, this is what we're doing, and go do it. And it's just so funny to giggle at.
Yeah. And I love it because it is humorous and it is fun, but for them it's also very real and very important to there. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I always like the way that Steve he's always polite with her, because yes, she is a higher ranking person, but even when they're somewhat equals, he's always giving her that respect of her position, while also being goofy and kind of, like a little schoolboy, kind of giddy around her. So he really wants to try to be this big macho stud guy around her, but he also is not going to be, because he's really likes her, he really respects her. Because you can tell that because when he meets up with Natalie Dormer, he's polite with her, but it's not like he's pushing her away when she attacks him with her lips. Where I think, I don't think he'd push Peggy Carter away, but I think he would be it would mean more to him. So I like the way that he is kind of always being respectful of not just her as a lady, because that's tradition, but because of her rank and because of her position in the military, so that she has earned.
I also like how even though Peggy falls in love with him when he's still Skinny Steve, he has to earn the right to have a relationship with her. And they really don't give you a sense of the time in the movie, but Steve became Captain America in 1943. In the chronology of the movie, he became Captain America in 1943. He disappeared in 1945. So they had 2 years to get together. And it didn't happen. But their relationship isn't all, oh, I'm in love with you, oh, I'm attracted to you, let's get together. Peggy really puts Steve in a position where he has to earn her. And Craig talked about the Natalie Dormer encounter. Peggy gets upset at Steve to the point to where a scene or two later, she shoots 4 bullets at him.
Yep.
While he's holding the prototype shield.
Oh man.
I mean, the shield protects him, but it's the prototype. He's never used it before.
The look of sadness in his face just popping up from behind the shield was just so pure.
Yes.
And also, Steve had to deal with mourning, at the time what he thought was the death of Bucky too, and she helped him through it, like we've talked about. So I like how life and the baggage both of them had got in the way of them getting together. And Steve had to live with that regret. I mean, it's one of the later films, he says, take it from the guy who's lived with regret, don't wait. And they both waited, but at the same time, it's not like they were in a position for both of them to jump in and have a healthy relationship either.
Yep.
Not until the point that they kiss. Steve's getting on the plane, Peggy's in the car, they kiss, and then, Steve goes off and disappears for 70 years.
Yeah, there was a war going on, kind of thing.
Don't look at me. I'm not going to kiss you.
Yeah. Even their goodbye is deeply unique and deeply rooted in that sort of mutual respect and mutual support. Instead of saying goodbye, I love you, I'm going to miss you, it doesn't turn into something deeply emotional. It's all about, sort of this like nurse at a bedside manner, trying to keep him as positive and as rooted to the here and now as she can, even as he's seeing this ice and water and tundra come up in his windshield. And it's so horrifying and so sad, and she's just listening to the end of his transmission. That's something that, again, I feel is very true to the time period when women were really being encouraged to be positive and to be cheerful and, keep the home fires burning. But, and like Craig said, she's, he's equally deferential to her in her rank. And we see that sort of compassion for him even when he is skinny Steve, and she's reluctant to go into the booth and leave sort of the surgical theater area. But immediately after that moment, we have the assassination, and then Peggy races out into the street with her gun, and she's standing and she's shooting, and the car is coming at her, and she's tackled out of the way. What do we think about that moment? Because that's the one moment where they do interfere with each other's choices. What happens there? That's fairly early, but what do we think is going on? Let's start with Craig, then we'll move to Blake and then to Erica.
Well, that could easily be, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I think it's just a character flaw of people who are extremely capable. People who are extremely capable, who look fear in the face and are not afraid, sometimes overlook the fact that they are in imminent danger, or they don't believe they're ever going to get hurt. So it's one of those situations where, yes, she could have shot the driver because she's a real good shot, but she could have also gotten run over. And odds are we're very good of getting run over. So I think it was just one of those things where two capable people have two different ideas. They meet. He's going to try to save her because she's not getting out of the way. He's probably, you can do the math in your head. She's got so much time. It's a timing issue. So she thinks she's going to shoot him. He thinks she's going to get hit. I don't think it was him thinking she's a damsel in distress. It was just, you're standing in the middle of the street. Someone's going at you. Even if you shoot the person, if they don't veer, you're going to get hit. So right. It was just the one time where they both had the same idea, as in, had in their heads, I can do this, but they had different results.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the beginning of a partnership between them. I've got your back, you've got my back. And Steve has her back, even though Craig's right, she probably wouldn't have gotten hit. She probably could have shot the driver, but and that was the impactful part of when the plane goes down. We're not with Steve when the plane goes down. We're with Peggy.
Yeah, right.
And the anguish she has to go through of losing that transmission and knowing the plane has crashed. She's not able to have his back, in his moment of need. And so I think that they are a very strong partnership. Absolutely. And I want to continue that thought, but after we get to the Endgame stuff about this partnership and what Marvel could potentially give us in the future. But anyway, Erica.
Honestly, you two said exactly what I wanted to say, so I don't really have anything to add. It was perfectly said, that perfect partnership. The idea, because that was my first thought, was he knows she's not a damsel in distress. He's seen her before and he knows about her. He knows that's not the type of person she is, and he doesn't want to rescue her because of that ideals. So that was my initial thoughts. You guys did really well marrying those two ideas together.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I found myself writing down as I took notes. It was like, Steve intervenes. I couldn't bring myself to write saves her. It's not that.
Yeah.
So.
100%.
So let's jump ahead to after World War II. We have the Peggy Carter one shot, which is a 15-minute film that shows that picks up a year after Steve's disappearance. And this film was actually part of the special features for the Iron Man 3 DVD and Blu-ray. And what this film chronicles is Peggy's life after Steve's disappearance. And she becomes a federal agent. And this is kind of the in-between time between the end of World War II and the formation of S.H.I.E.L.D. Craig's going to take us into that idea being expanded, the one shot being expanded into a TV series. And we're going to specifically focus for a few minutes on season 1 of Agent Carter.
Well, the one shot idea is kind of their backdoor pilots, because not only is Peggy Carter launched that way, but there was a series done with Agent Coulson and Agent Sitwell where they were doing little non-related, non-canonical little side adventures, and that ended up being Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But when it comes to the actual series 1 is really the part that focuses on and it's not blatant, but it's there. It's the relationship between Steve and Peggy, which there is no relationship really because he's gone. He's out of the picture. He's presumed dead. And the entire series is her kind of dealing with that and letting go. Because at the time, they didn't know what the series was going to have, what the movies were going to do. So they didn't have an end product. They didn't have an end goal. And so they try to keep it ambiguous as best as possible. But the two things that really struck out to me on the series was every episode, there would be a radio play in the background. And what it was basically doing was transposing all of Peggy Carter's adventures and turning him around and making it so Steve's Captain America was the hero. Yeah. And he was always rescuing the Peggy Carter character. I can't remember the name of the lady, but it was not Peggy Carter. It was like Bevy Martyr. I don't know. It was close. But
she was quite the damsel in distress.
Always is.
Oh my gosh.
And then throughout the series, at the very end, she's keeping a vial of his blood. So apparently, S.H.I.E.L.D., if they can find the right people, can resynthesize the super soldier serum. But at the end, there's a whole series of stuff going on for the series. And Howard Stark is convinced that Steve is alive, that he's got to rescue him. And to break him out of this, she's got to convince him and basically convince herself that Steve is dead. And it really allows her to no longer pine for him. She can always say, I loved him. He was the love of my life, but it doesn't have to stop her life moving forward. So she throws his blood into the East River. And season 2 is just kind of her continuing on that with a couple hints here and there of a mystery husband. And, we find out later on there was kids involved, but we don't know because now, thanks to Endgame, everything's thrown up in the air. We don't know what's going on. But how many of you saw the actual series?
I saw it when it first came out. I need to rewatch it again.
Yeah.
Because I have so much.
I rewatched it earlier this summer as part of my sheltering inside, and I thought that there were some wonderful moments.
Her and Jarvis.
Oh,
yes,
I love her and Jarvis.
Yes, great chemistry with those two actors, and going back to that moment, I think it was the final episode of season 1 where she dumped Steve's blood into the river. That was a very powerful moment of acting for Haley Atwell.
Oh my gosh.
I think that she really showed a lot of growth with the character, yet at the same time, a lot of strength that, it's almost like I can go on and do the things that I'm going to do, at least in the Marvel MCU canon. So
that's the one thing Marvel consistently does well is casting. I mean, they do great in execution as well, but they pick some people that are basically once in a generation type of person that will fit that role. And I think Haley Atwell, it's a testament to her acting that they keep bringing her back.
Yeah,
because they don't really have to. They didn't have to bring her back, but her popularity and her ability.
I mean, and there's other cameos she has that we're not even going to talk about, like the first Ant-Man movie. That was that was a scene that could have been played out without Peggy, yet it was fantastic having her there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and seeing that. So let's jump ahead to 2014 and Erica and my favorite Captain America movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Let's talk about the Peggy and Steve stuff from that movie.
Okay, I've got my Word doc pulled up. So this is one of my most favorite movies for so many reasons that I really can't go into right now because it'll just go on for hours. So
we have about 15 minutes.
I know, right? So I'm like, okay, here we go. I got my 3 points. Let's go. So there are 3 very prominent interactions. 2 of them are the most obvious. One, not so much, that you probably didn't think of. So in the first scene, we're seeing Steve going through these old files from World War II. He sees Peggy's not dead, and he's just thinking about her. And that's where he goes to the museum and listens to her talk about him, which is visibly bringing him to tears. And it's so sweet because one of the last things that was said in the sentence was kind of how even after he's dead, he's still affecting her life in so many positive ways that we can see even in the Peggy Carter series, which directly correlates to the next scene where he's actually with her. And my gosh, the makeup they did for Haley Atwell was so good. It blows my mind every time at how fantastic Marvel is with their prosthetics. So while we're there, Steve's talking to Peggy. He's still feeling guilt of not being there, and she's kind of reassuring him, you did the right thing, you saved the world. And it's that partnership that comes back where he's having these doubts and she's there to kind of help see him through those doubts. And what's really interesting is seeing going back and watching this, especially after Endgame, because she tells him, I have lived a life. My only regret is that you didn't get to live yours. The world has changed and none of us can go back. All we can do is our best, and sometimes the best we can do is start over, which completely frames Endgame for Steve, because that gives him the idea of now there's this time travel, and you can clearly tell he's planning, he wants to go back, he wants to do the start over where he can actually go back and live his life with her. So I found that fascinating how that practically framed Endgame for him without us even realizing it, those tiny things. And this last scene is one that I didn't expect. So I love watching new rock stars. They are doing God's work, and they do the most fantastic breakdowns and Easter eggs of all the Marvel movies. So I went and watched that a couple of days ago, again, for probably like the 12th time. And there's one of the very last scenes where Steve and Natasha have gone back to Camp Lehigh, where Cap first did his training. And there's this little moment where Steve is seeing, skinny Steve kind of looking back at him. And you can take that in one of two ways. You can take that as kind of like skinny Steve gawking at him, saying, oh, this is what I've become. And Steve's kind of looking back and wondering, this is who I was. Have I deferred from that? Kind of having an internal battle. Or we can take that literally, that this is literally a memory. And if we really think about it, if this is an actual memory, he is realistically gawking at Peggy because she's riding along in the truck there. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I can see that being just a real memory because he had just come from all of this stuff going on, being able to visit Peggy, having the heartbreak of her Alzheimer's and things being reset. So he still has those deep emotions in him, and him possibly reliving a memory of him seeing Peggy was just so pure and so sweet. And I personally like to believe that that's what he is doing, is taking a look back at the real memories and seeing all this stuff from his past. So I really love Winter Soldier and all of that it does, and those little moments that it gives us for Steve and Peggy to see that their relationship continues on no matter what. And it's just so sweet.
So really quick, folding Endgame into this, when Steve is with Peggy and she's 93 or 94 years old, and she has that moment of clarity of like, oh, Steve, you came back.
Oh.
Now,
yes.
Is that her Alzheimer's taking her back to the 1940s, or is that Peggy remembering when Steve came back?
That, oh my god,
time travel.
I love that theory so much because it's totally possible that is the moment when he came back and they're dancing in the house.
Yeah.
And I just, that's one of those things that will make me cry. And I won't do it.
So speaking of dancing, London, let's touch really quick on the brief Steve and Peggy stuff in Avengers Age of Ultron.
So this was something, it's sandwiched between so many just mind-boggling scenes. Scarlet Witch is so incredibly powerful, and all of the visions that she casts are so poignant in so many ways and so disturbing. That for me, this one didn't really rate. When I saw it, it just didn't click for me. But it's around 50 minutes in, for anybody who wants to go back and watch it. He walks into this club, and everything is red, and it's so loud and so chaotic and so bright and just so much. It's this very sensory overload experience. And a flashbulb goes off near his head, and he flinches away from it. And you realize this isn't so much about Peggy and Steve as it is a PTSD experience. There's swing music in the background, but over that we can hear the whistle of an artillery shell. And so it's quite disturbing. But he walks through people laughing and dancing and fighting in the background. And there's someone on the floor who's spilled some wine on his chest, but he looks like a soldier bleeding. And he walks through all of this to get to Peggy, who asks, "Are you ready for our dance?" And she says, the war is over, Steve. We can go home. Imagine it. And suddenly everything's quiet, and the room is empty, and Steve is alone. And then there's this quick flash of them dancing, and then he's alone again. And it's very, it's a really just quick but powerful moment, because it's very clear that he's imagined this moment being with her. And he knows that for her, in her timeline, yes, it's over, it's done, everything is okay. But for him, he's very much still in the midst of everything, both literally with all that's going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline, the Age of Ultron, this film, etc., but also emotionally, he's still very much in the middle of this with this PTSD experience. So yeah, that was really incredible for me, watching it and really seeing that. It's this rewatching.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I love how dancing frequently comes up, especially it's, I don't think it's the same song in Age of Ultron, but it's the same song throughout everywhere else that they dance to at the end. I have briefly forgotten it, but I think it's A Long, Long Time, something like that. It was a very popular song for when soldiers would come back from World War II. And I love that that's kind of like an overarching thing, that it really has been such a long time, and that they're dancing and the song just continues to just like flow effortlessly through their story.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful.
And it's kind of in the moment. It is the PTSD moment, but it's also foreshadowing Endgame. Yep. That vision at the same time. Civil War came out 2016. Haley Atwell was not actually in the movie, but there was an important event that happened to it that impacted the relationship. Does anyone know what that is?
She passed away.
She died. And there's a fan theory that at the funeral that old Steve is there.
Yep.
In fact, if you look at the images from the funeral, you have young Steve. He's at the front on the right-hand side of the casket. And then there's a shot from behind. And on the left-hand side of the casket in the back is an old man with gray hair. And the fan theory is that that's old Steve. And the screenwriters for Endgame, they confirmed it, although the directors won't confirm that because they have a different theory. Mm-hmm. We have about 4 minutes left, so let's talk about Endgame. Let's talk about who has the right theory. Now, Steve goes back to Camp Lehigh in 1970 with Tony Stark to get the Tesseract. or the Time Stone, because Loki takes it in 2012 New York, and Steve finds himself in Peggy's office. He sees her in the outer part of the office, and he also sees a picture of him as Skinny Steve, going back to how Craig talked about she fell in love with him before he became Captain America. And then she sees a picture of Peggy with 2 kids. And then we, of course, have the now what's becoming the iconic end of Steve traveling back in time to Peggy, them finally having their dance. There's 2 theories of thought, and I want to wrap up by getting everyone's thought on this. The screenwriters of Endgame said that, yeah, Steve stayed in our timeline and just stayed out of everyone's way. And that there's possibly 2 kids out there that have some super soldier DNA in them. Or the directors, the Russo brothers, said, no, Steve created a brand new branch, the way that the Ancient One explained to Bruce Banner. Steve created a brand new branch, but that doesn't explain how Steve got back to the prime reality to give Sam Wilson the shield. So we'll start with Craig, Erica, then London, and see what's your take, really quick, on what theory, or do you have a theory of all of your own?
Well, I believe he
on?
did. I think he did get another branch because there's 2 reasons. This for a movie, Endgame works fantastically as an ending, because it's great to see them embracing and dancing and having that. It's a great way to wrap up the whole 22 movies. But to think that Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter are going to sit back and not do anything with that knowledge goes against everything they have ever said or ever done in their lives. It's so against character that Steve Rogers would keep his mouth shut and work at the pharmacy for 50 years, seeing JFK get assassinated, seeing all these things, all these horrible things happen.
He's a stay-at-home dad.
I think that I'm sure they got involved too. I don't believe that Peggy and Steve just kind of, ran the local homeless shelter for the next 60 years.
He was still leading S.H.I.E.L.D. for decades.
Yeah, and I believe she would use every bit of his knowledge of the future to change things, to make things, and because that's one thing she is first. She's a patriot. She believes in truth, justice, and democracy. So she would be doing whatever she could to do that. And I think that that's what she would do. And I think Steve would be dressed as, I don't know, U.S. agent, somebody else. He would have been another person out there kicking butt with Ant-Man and Wasp, and Michael Douglas, and so I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
Erica.
I absolutely agree. There's just no way in their characters that they would sit by and do nothing. And I think it just depends on the person. And if you want to go with the Russo brothers or the producer writers, I personally believe that the Russo brothers' ideals of them, that they created their own new timeline simply because it aligns perfectly with their characters. I love to toy with the ideas of him going back and being in the original timeline and maybe doing other things here and there. I think that that's a really fun ideal, but I personally don't believe that that's the truth. He absolutely did his own timeline because that follows his and her character. Because if you go the other way, it just goes against everything we've learned. And that's just not how it is. So I 100% agree that he did his own timeline.
Okay, London?
Yeah, I think he would have had to branch off and create his own timeline because he's not willing to compromise the piece that they've created by the end of Avengers Endgame, even to the point that when he comes back and visits and passes on his shield to Sam, and Sam says, "Do you want to tell me about her?" He says, "No, I don't think I will." He's not willing to create any sort of ripple effect. That he's not going to compromise everything that they worked for. So when he goes back, heavy scare quotes there. He's helped timelines. I fully agree.
Okay, I'm going to go against the panel. I'm going to say I'm going to say Steve was in our timeline, and he was a shadow agent doing good, but staying off everyone's radar because he's awesome that way. Yet, Steve is he's an honorable person. That's why he can lift Thor's hammer. And he's not going to reveal anything or get in the way of anything. He's not going to change the future.
Then what is he Then what is he doing? Because everything he does as a shadow agent.
He's working behind the scenes.
Everything he
like,
does.
He's like the good guy version of the Winter Soldier.
Right. And everything he does.
He's a shadow. He's a rumor.
But everything he does is a ripple. So see, this is why time travel is fun to talk about, but it doesn't work.
Exactly. You can't get too into it or else we all get mad.
Yeah. And again, Endgame was a beautiful movie, but if you start to analyze it because of time travel, you'll get upset.
But anyway, this is what I'd like to see from Marvel, either in a new trilogy of films. If Chris Evans and Haley Atwell are up for this, or a ongoing Disney Plus series, but whether it's our time, our reality, or a new reality that Steve created with his time travel shenanigans, I would like to see a series of adventures of Steve and Peggy working together. That team finally being together and working to save the world.
I think that would work really well as an animated series.
Yep. I was going to say the same thing. Animation.
I'll take it.
Because
I'll take it.
Chris Evans, in general, he wanted to finish it and leave it behind because it was so physically taxing. Right. So I think having it be an animated series would be perfect. Also, I totally forgot. This is the shirt that I wore when I met Chris Evans.
Oh, yeah.
I wore it today because he is such a sweetheart.
Yes. He was really cool. Well, hi,
Jake is back.
Oh, no, London dropped out again.
Yeah. I'll keep an eye for her. If she comes back in, I'll add her back in. I just want to say thank you guys for being here. That was an awesome panel. It was a lot of fun to listen to. I also just want to say Blake's 100% right. And he didn't create a new timeline. That's my feeling. He was always her husband. Those were his kids. That's what I like to think in my head. Anyway, again, great panel. Thank you so much. Erica, you can tell me later how wrong I am. It's fine.
No, I'll remind you over and over again, Jay.
Just the one thing is, but then his niece.
That's creepy.
Or is it not? Is it a Luke and Leia thing, or is it a it was a different time?
If the niece
before he went back.
If the niece is Peggy's brother's daughter, then it's fine. There's no blood relation there.
Oh, this has gotten really off the rails quickly. This is some kind of hillbilly genealogy thing going on. I don't want to take a part of.
All right. Let's do what we need to do, though.
Steve Rogers is his own grandpa.
Yeah, this was a wonderful panel. I do want to say again, we are raffling off a great prize here. Let me show you guys what we're raffling off one more time.
I bought enough tickets. Hopefully I'll win this.
Oh, man.
So look at this artwork that we are raffling off.
This is fantastic. This is beautiful.
On the smaller one is Robert Bruno, and then Ian Maxfield Designs did the larger one. So these are some incredible pieces here. We are so grateful to them for donating these. The winner for the raffle this time around was Jenny Ray Reynolds. So congratulations to her. That is exciting and awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone who's been watching or who has been watching.
Who will watch.
It's time travel. They could have watched it already and they'd come back to rewatch it.
All right.
Good.
I want to know if they're watching it later. Is it in a new reality or is it in our reality?
Who knows? I'm actually a shadow agent, really. And by the way, I just want to appreciate Blake bringing in Nomad into this because I would love to see Nomad on the screen somehow in some fashion. But we're going to go ahead and tie this up. We really appreciate it. We will be back at this again at 7 p.m. tonight for an Avengers Endgame panel. So all the Avengers you can handle. Look at this. I've got my Captain America ready to go here. With Mjolnir. One of my favorite moments of any movie almost ever. So
look, he's saying you're wrong. Look, no, Jake, no.
I created my own timeline.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. We'll see you all later.
Is that Funko Pop Steve's child?